Hey up everyone, and welcome back to Combat Mission Black Sea for the after action report for Vanguard, the last mission in the US campaign. Now this is actually a little bit difficult simply because the mission was so big and it lasted for so long that the what happened video is in a sense a very stripped down version of events. So we focused on what happened in broad strokes, and that's pretty much what an after action report is. So, just by means of comparison, if you've seen the Stavlo series that we've just finished, me and General Sarantini have just finished doing a final Blitzkrieg game, and there's about 10 hours of footage to that. That's where I'm recording pretty much everything apart from the initial thoughts and the force selection. So that's all the thinking that goes into it, why we're making these decisions, what do we do, finding out what happens in each turn, and of course watching it all play out and go horribly wrong. That's 10 hours, and that was for 33 turns, or about half an hour's worth of gameplay. Vanguard has 125 turns to it, so if you tot that up in the same amount of detail, it will be about 40 hours worth of footage. And obviously I've had to cull that down into a 20-minute video, mostly because I can't remember what actually happened. I can remember the broad strokes, and it's an exercise in making notes as you go along about the interesting things. But 40 hours worth of footage, nobody's going to want to watch that. Well, they might do, but I don't have the patience, the bandwidth, the memory, or the inclination to churn out 40 hours worth of it, especially not in a single sitting. It's a little bit different with the semi-live, turn-by-turn stuff. But in any case, it doesn't leave me an awful lot to talk about when it gets down to brass tacks for the after-action report. So broadly what I'm going to concentrate on here is what's called the attacker's advantage, or what you could call the attacker's advantage, which is that as the attacker, I can control, or I was able to control, what happened on the battlefield. I had the initiative. So all the way through, I was doing my best to control, to my own advantage, where I exposed my forces to the enemy, in what strength I exposed my forces to the enemy, and what I was directing my forces against. Now you're going to have to bear with me here because the map is so big, I'm getting about 15 to 20 frames just moving the camera around to have a look. And we'll turn the lights on. This is the artificial brightness, which is really, really handy. So what have we got? Well, we started off, and I was talking about we're going to attack up this valley. The objectives are, let's turn them back on for a second, all the way up here, but we're going to start off by attacking up this village. Why? Because we can control the engagement. There's only a few places the enemy can actually attack or bring fire to bear on us if we're pushing up here. Originally I was worried about troops in the village. It was a moot point because there weren't any Russians there, but if there were, they wouldn't have been able, because they're in this dead ground here, they're on the reverse slope from the rest of the defensive positions up here. Behave yourself, camera. I'd be able to concentrate on a small portion of the enemy and destroy him in detail. And then we actually got that up at the end of the valley. When we finally get there, this map is massive. Past the burnt out wrecks of Humvees and Bradleys and dead pixel tripping. There was an enemy strong point in here, and there was the tanks in the mini Somme. Well, it wasn't the mini Somme at the time, it was like kind of beautiful pristine forest. Now it's all gone. That stuff up there. Again, I was able to, for the most part, engage them without exposing my force unduly to any kind of enemy attention. Except for, we're never going to be able to see it. I don't think it's even going to draw them in. No. There was some T-90s covering the front of this from all the way over here. Oh yeah, there they are, they're on fire. There's also some Oh, okay, they're RPGs. I thought they might be AT-14s, which would also be doing the same job. But you can see we've got these T90AMs over here covering the front of the... See, we don't even have the draw distance to... Yeah, see, so they took out that Humvee and that Bradley there. Firing all the way across the map, so... Even though it was slightly covered, I could control it. If I had a problem with that, I could have put some smoke down pretty easily. And in the end, once we twigged that something was actually over there blowing stuff up, it was an exercise in getting a drone over there and then arting them to death and using the hellfires on the drones. So all the way through, I was able to control the pace of the engagement. So I could focus on a small part of the enemy's defense and crush it with overwhelming force while leaving the rest of it alone without exposing myself to it. And because of the fantastic drone artillery Apache combo, it was able to really wear down the enemy's main defense before we actually got stuck in. So if you look at some of the statistics for the FOs and things, so that on the Colt section, 26 enemy dead, 2 BMP3s, 4 T90s, a Tiger, BRDM, a artillery observation vehicle, the Tunguska, one of the other, the TAC-P team, 3 tanks, a tank destroyer, and a BMP. We were also using that one, weren't we? Yeah, 24 enemy casualties, 2 BMPs, 2 T90s, 2 tank destroyers, and a APC. You know, these guys never saw the enemy. Well, they did through drones, but they didn't. You know, they just hang around down here, and there's nothing the enemy could do about them. And all that could go on. You know, I can wear down the enemy without destroying him. Yeah, without getting myself in any kind of trouble. And the beauties of modern technology. And then, of course, for the end game, I was able to bring up overwhelming force, a load of Abrams, as many Abrams as I could, and then just bring them over this reverse slope to where they started engaging the enemy. And because there was so many and the enemy was so worn down, like I say, we were just able to destroy whatever came our way. Whatever popped its head off, got it shut up. To the point that the assault on Objective Lion was almost a moot point, because I can bring in that overwhelming firepower, and these enemy units over here have been pretty much ineffective. Clearing out individual gigantic factory complex areas with what is realistically a very small infantry force is a different story entirely. Which is why we kind of stopped on that front. The only thing in the game that worried me was when the AI sent these tanks down my flank. So about 6 T90s. And that was more because it caught me by surprise, but one of the problems with the AI is that it doesn't really have the capacity to see and exploit things in the way that a human can. So yes, it sent some tanks down here because that was part of the scenario plan, and the scenario designer decided that for whatever reason, if X happens, then we're going to send 2 tank platoons down this way. And it did catch me with my pants down, and the XO got vaporized inside his Bradley. But I had the forces on hand, and I could very quickly react to sort the problem out. We had the kill sack with the Abrams, brought in the overwhelming force once again, and again these were, you know, separated off from the main force of the enemy without any support, so they didn't have much of a chance. This is one of the issues with the AI, and it's a good issue. It's a good issue to have when you think about it, because an AI which can see and understand the situation like this, it can see the weak points and think, right, we're going to exploit that. It can see a clump of little vehicles, an Abrams, a Bradley, and a single Humvee clumped together and think, actually, that's probably some kind of headquarters unit. We better go smash that. You know, it's not smart enough to think like that, and that's good, because if we did have an AI which was competent enough to give a human player serious problems, or was flexible and smart enough to give a human player serious problems, then we'd have Skynet, and nobody wants Skynet. So yeah, that's about it. It's, despite the scale of the battle, it was really extremely simple. Just an exercise in destroying an outlying outpost that the enemy had over here to secure the flank, and by the time that was done, we'd inflicted serious casualties with the indirect fire support, with the artillery, with the Apaches, all thanks to the miracle of drone observation. So yeah, when you have the opportunity like this to wear the enemy down before you get to him, and that capacity to choose where, when and how you're going to engage the enemy, it's difficult for the defender to do anything about it. Even more so difficult when it's the AI, and it's, when you think about reaction times and kind of feedback loops, the AI's reaction time is, it has like a couple of decisions to make. It's either going to do nothing, or it's going to do something that it got programmed to do, which is in the plan. And if the human player does something that doesn't conform to doing nothing or what's in the plan, then the AI is basically screwed. That's not to say it hasn't been fun though. It has been a much more enjoyable experience than I was expecting playing against the AI in the scenarios, because you get to see things that you don't really see. So if we were playing a huge scale meeting engagement, there's no way you could bring up, you know, a battalion of Abrams. That's just not going to happen, because you can't afford it, because they're so expensive. And you don't see the same kind of air support and that kind of thing. You get to play with a lot of toys that you wouldn't usually get to play with in the quick battles. And while, like I've been saying, the AI isn't the same kind of an opponent, it's still a challenge. Granted, it's a challenge in most cases that the player is supposed to be able to succeed against. But that's no bad thing in itself, especially if you're new to the game and you're looking to find out how things work. I don't think you can really properly compare fighting against the AI with fighting against a human opponent, simply because it's like comparing apples and oranges. It's two different things. But there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's, like I say, quite difficult to think of something to explain here. It's all went fairly well. You always have more things to talk about when things go horribly, horribly wrong. But yeah, it's a total victory in the campaign. A series of 5 solid victories. One in each scenario, so can't complain about that. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.